My name is Daniel and I'm 34 years old. When I was 9 years old, I stood in the doorway of my parents' bedroom and watched my father pack a suitcase while my mother sat on the edge of the bed, silent, staring at the wall. He didn't yell. He didn't explain. He just left. I remember the sound of the front door closing, not a slam, just a soft click, and somehow that quiet click was louder than any shouting could have been. For years after that, I told myself that if I ever built a family of my own, it would never end in a quiet click. It would never end in silence. I promised myself I would always know the truth, even if the truth was ugly. For 25 years, I tried to build a life that felt safe. I worked hard. I kept my word. I showed up. And when I met Claire 3 years ago, I thought I had finally found someone who understood that kind of steadiness. Claire was 32, a physical therapist at a clinic downtown, and she had this habit of leaving little sticky notes on my mirror before she left for early shifts, just small things, like "you've got this today" or "don't forget your lunch." Small tender moments. Things that told me she paid attention. Things that told me she cared about the details of my life, not just the big moments. We got married 14 months ago in a small ceremony with 40 guests. Her parents were there. My mother was there. Everyone said we looked happy, and we were. I believed, fully, that I had broken the cycle my father started. I believed I had built something that wouldn't end in a quiet click. Then, 12 days ago, everything changed. It was a Tuesday evening, around 8 p.m. Claire was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I wasn't trying to look. I want to be clear about that. I've never been the kind of person who checks someone's phone. But the screen lit up with a voicemail notification, and the caller ID read a name I didn't recognize, Marcus. Underneath it, the preview line of the transcribed voicemail showed just enough words to stop me cold. "Just tell him we're just friends and he'll believe you, he always does." I stood there in the kitchen, under the flickering light above the stove, and I felt something crack open in my chest. Not anger yet. Just a kind of falling feeling, like the floor had quietly given way beneath me. I didn't confront her that night. I told myself I needed to understand what I was looking at before I said anything. So for the next 6 days, I watched. I listened. I noticed the new gym schedule she suddenly had on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. I noticed how she'd angle her phone away from me at dinner. I noticed the way she'd laugh a little too quickly when I asked simple questions about her day. But here's the thing: my father never gave himself time to actually find the truth before the silence took over. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I was going to know exactly what I was dealing with, and then I was going to decide, calmly, what came next. What Claire didn't know was that 8 months into our marriage, worried about nothing in particular, just being careful, I had quietly kept my name on the lease of the house we lived in, a house my grandmother had left me, technically still legally mine, with Claire only ever added as an occupant, never an owner. I hadn't done it out of suspicion. I had done it because a lawyer friend once told me, always keep the paperwork clean, even in a happy marriage. At the time, it felt almost silly, like overcautious planning for a disaster that would never come. Now, sitting in my car outside a coffee shop with a printout of the deed on the passenger seat, it didn't feel silly at all. I also had something else. 3 days after the voicemail, I drove past the gym on one of her class nights just to see her car. It wasn't there. Instead, I saw it 4 blocks away, parked outside an apartment complex I didn't recognize. I didn't go in. I didn't make a scene. I just took a photo of the license plate and the timestamp on my phone, 6:47 p.m., a Thursday. The one thing that almost broke me during those 6 days wasn't Claire. It was my mother-in-law, Diane. Diane had always been polite to me, but distant, the kind of polite that feels like a held breath. On the 5th day, she called me, out of nowhere, and said something that still echoes in my head: "Whatever's going on, Daniel, families stay together. You figure it out quietly. You don't need to make a mess of things." At first I thought she was just old-fashioned. Later, I understood, Diane wasn't protecting our marriage. She was protecting appearances. She was afraid of what a divorce would do to how the family looked to their friends, to their church group, to the neighbors who still asked about the perfect wedding. Her fear wasn't really about me and Claire at all. It was about control over the story the family got to tell about itself. That call almost made me back down. It almost made me think maybe I was overreacting, maybe I should just let it go quietly, the way my father never let anything go loudly enough to fix it. But then I thought about that sticky note still stuck to my mirror from a week earlier, "Don't forget your lunch," written by the same hands that had, apparently, been somewhere else entirely on Thursday nights. And I knew quiet wasn't the same thing as peace. The confrontation happened 9 days after the voicemail, at Sunday dinner, at Diane's house, with Claire's parents, her brother, and 2 family friends at the table. It wasn't a setting I chose for drama. It was simply the next time everyone would be together, and I wanted witnesses, not for revenge, but because I was done being the only one who knew the truth. Dinner went normally for the first 20 minutes. Then Diane, trying to be light, asked me how the house situation was going, since Claire had mentioned wanting to eventually add her name fully to the property. The table went quiet in that specific way rooms go quiet when everyone senses something is about to shift. I set my fork down. I didn't raise my voice. "The house has been in my name since before we were even engaged," I said. "That hasn't changed. And it's not going to change right now." Claire's face went pale. "Daniel, can we talk about this later?" "We can," I said, still calm, "but I think it's time everyone here understands something else too." I looked at her, not with anger, just steady. "I know about Marcus. I know about Thursday nights. I have the voicemail. I have the photo from 3 blocks from the gym you said you were at." The room went completely silent. Claire's brother set his glass down slowly. Diane's mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Claire's father looked down at his plate, his jaw tight, like a man who suddenly understood a version of his daughter he didn't want to see. Claire herself just stared at me, her eyes filling, her mouth trying to form an excuse that never fully arrived. "It's not what it," she started, and then stopped, because we both knew there wasn't an ending to that sentence that would hold up. "This isn't a mistake," I said quietly. "It's been going on for a while. I'm not here to humiliate you in front of your family. I'm here because I'm done being the only one who knows the truth in this house." No one defended her. Not even Diane, who a week earlier had told me to handle things quietly for the sake of appearances. In that moment, appearances were exactly what was collapsing. I didn't storm out. I finished my glass of water, I thanked Claire's father for dinner, and I left with the same quiet steadiness my father never had the night he packed his suitcase. But mine wasn't the quiet of running away. It was the quiet of someone who finally knew exactly where he stood. In the weeks that followed, Claire moved out. I didn't fight over anything that wasn't rightfully mixed between us. I split our joint savings fairly, down to the dollar, even though legally I didn't have to give her half of an account I'd funded mostly on my own before the marriage. I did it because I wanted to leave that chapter clean, not bitter. One small act of grace, not because she deserved it, but because I didn't want to become someone who used fairness as a weapon. 2 months later, I sat in my kitchen on a quiet Saturday morning, coffee in hand, sunlight coming through the same window where the sticky notes used to be. The mirror was bare now. No notes. Just my own reflection, and for the first time in over a year, it felt honest. I think about my father sometimes, and the quiet click of that door when I was 9. For years I thought the lesson was to never let silence be the end of a story. But I understand it differently now. The lesson wasn't about avoiding quiet. It was about making sure that when the quiet finally comes, it's because you chose peace, not because you were too afraid to ask for the truth. If you've ever sat in a room and felt the floor quietly shift beneath you, felt that first crack of knowing something was wrong before anyone said it out loud, trust that feeling. You don't have to yell to be strong. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay calm, gather the truth, and speak it plainly, in a room full of people who thought you'd stay quiet forever. If this story meant something to you, stay with us. Subscribe, because every story here is for someone who needed to hear it tonight.